Welcome, everyone, to another edition. It's Wednesday. It's 7 o'clock. This is the Nerd Informer. Everywhere you want to be.
Can't beat it.
What's going on, buddy?
What's going on? Let's have
We
a
got
great
a
podcast.
We have a cool show tonight. We're talking. We have a special guest, so this will be cool. He is an author. He is author Keith Evans. He has a bachelor's degree in chemistry, so he's a smart dude. From the University of Central Florida, he is a retired Army reservist and a retired forensic scientist. So he's smarter than we are. So
Oh yeah,
so there's that. And he's got a couple books out: Vampires Dead or Alive and The Hayes House: Ghosts Are People Too. And of course, we got to start with vampires. So I'm going to bring him in here real quick, and we're going to kick this off.
oh yeah.
Keith, welcome.
Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely.
Oh,
Thanks
you're
for coming on. I've been watching some of your videos and stuff, some of the ones that you sent me and stuff, and I've seen some of your ghost hunting stuff in the graveyard. So it's cool. I'm fascinated.
We're all for it.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I just completed Paranormal Short Session 7 today at the Chestnut Street Cemetery in Apalachicola, Florida. So I've been using my say yes or no, true or false mode on my Obelisk 5, and it's color coded.
Okay.
So I always consider green to be yes or true, and
Mhm.
red to be no or false.
Okay.
Gotcha.
So I was getting some very intelligent responses today. I was happy with the results.
Oh,
Right on. We'll get into all of that stuff here shortly. Let's start with vampires in your book, Vampires Dead or Alive. So in 1897, Bram Stoker wrote about Dracula, which is one of the probably most people's first introduction, I think, to vampires and the drinking blood and immortal undead creatures that they are. And it was really considered like the benchmark for vampire fiction, and it's influenced so many other movies, Interview with a Vampire, Fright Night, Dusk Till Dawn, Van Helsing, one of my favorites, Blade. What was your start with vampires? How'd you get there?
Well, as a child, I used to watch the British soap opera called Dark Shadows.
Okay.
And when I was growing up in Maryland, it came on TV about 4:30 and in the afternoon. So I was home from school. And I guess it was on for 3 or 4 years before it went off. And I just, I loved that show. And of course, there weren't too many shows on TV about paranormal.
Yeah.
Sure.
And the way my family was with don't talk about it, don't say anything about paranormal. So it was nice to just see a show that covered paranormal.
Right.
Oh,
And,
yeah.
my hero was Barnabas Collins. So I just liked him.
Okay.
I liked him. And it started to just jog my thoughts and feelings about how do vampires do what they do,
hmm
and what's the difference between being dead and being alive?
Okay.
And can there actually be an animated living person who has some characteristics of being dead also?
Yeah.
So that's what I had been thinking about vampires since I was probably in middle school when the show came on.
Okay.
So I guess I was probably 10, 11, 12. And I just thought, well, why not write a book about it? Because it's material that I never see anyplace.
Yeah.
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 And I thought it's the same characteristics, the traditional characteristics of a vampire, but I write about my thoughts and feelings about theoretically how can a vampire do what they do.
Yeah.
And I use a combination of physics, uh, genetics, and astronomy to explain how a vampire do what they do. So each chapter is broken down in my book, Vampires Dead or Alive, as a characteristic of a vampire. For instance, like a characteristic of a vampire being able to change into a bat.
Mhm.
hmm
And, I talk about how is that possible? And I try to come up with a theory, and I explain how the vampire does that.
Okay.
And, just to make it really short, I think vampires have the ability to bend time and space, and
Okay.
might be able to channel some type of energy through the Earth's mantle, or they might be able to harness a small black hole to bend
Okay.
time and space to a time when they actually were a bat. But it is
Hmm.
localized only to them. That doesn't, if you bend time and space, your whole environment's going to go back with you. But
Yeah.
you do it just so they go back to a time when they were a bat. Now,
Oh,
me,
okay.
I believe in reincarnation.
Hmm.
I think we've been around in and out in other animals and other people. And so if you've been a bat once in your prior soul, you can
Yeah.
just bend time and space and go back to that.
Oh, I like
Interesting.
that. I didn't think about it that way.
I saw somewhere where you were asked if you thought vampires were cryptids, and your answer kind of surprised me because you said, "Yeah, I think if I'm remembering that correctly."
Yes, I think they are. I think they're cryptids that have made it probably for thousands of years
Hmm.
with just regular people who aren't vampires.
Yeah.
So not everyone has the characteristic, but I think that if one passed away and say prior to the Civil War, because the Civil War is when they started to use embalming fluid.
Yeah.
Embalming fluid, you're not going to come back to life because that's just going to, you know, make sure that
Oh,
you
yeah.
look like you're living, but it's just counterproductive for life once you have embalming fluid put into your blood vessels. So I think prior to the Civil War,
Yeah.
I think that a lot of people who were buried might have been in a deep coma, might
Mhm.
not actually clinically been dead with the technology they have today.
Yeah.
They might have just been in a long-term deep coma. And I think that if they have what I call the vampire gene, if they're buried in a tightly sealed coffin where their bugs and worms can't get in and start eating on them,
Yeah.
I think that they are almost like a hibernating animal where they don't need water, they don't need food, they don't their respiratory rate is so low they need very little oxygen.
Okay.
And I think when within this coffin they can actually heal themselves, maybe through some type of vibrational healing, and that's one way. And I feel that whenever the coffin is open,
Yeah.
then they reanimate. And back
Okay.
then, before say 1850, the only way your coffin was going to be open is if there was a grave robbers who
Yeah.
either
Mhm.
wanted to dig you up and sell your body to a newly formed medical school, or dig you up and steal whatever valuables you were buried with. So I think that's how a lot of the vampire legends started.
Okay.
Because if you're grave robbing, you're doing something illegal.
Yeah.
And I guess if you rob a grave and the person reanimates, that would pretty much scare
Anyone.
whoever's doing the grave robbing into getting a
Sure.
new job.
Yeah. They
So
won't be doing that.
I really look at that as one of the carryover traits that people have from the thousands of years of interbreeding between the vampire uh, people and the humans, like we think
Hmm.
we are. But I think there's a little bit of vampire in all of us.
I like that.
So there is a real life vampire disease, and it's called, I'm going to screw this up, porphyria. And it's a rare inherited blood disorder that's sometimes called the vampire disease. And
I've
its
heard of
side
it.
effects are like sensitivity to sunlight, you get blisters, red or brownish urine, aversion to garlic. Tyler, you couldn't have that because everything you eat is garlic.
Yeah. I know.
And even back in like the 19th century, Rhode Island was considered to be the vampire capital of America. between the late 1700s and 1890. Vampire superstitions were prevalent in New England because of tuberculosis. And obviously it's rare and treatable today, but back then it probably looked very different than than it does today. So I think with those combination of things, do you think it's likely that's kind of partly where the origin of vampire lore came from? Diseases like that? And
well, it might, the people that had the disease where they are very sensitive to sunlight and garlic, I think that could be the carryover characteristics of the interbreeding between vampires and what we call human beings today.
okay.
So it could just be just the characteristics, the more mundane characteristics.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah.
So what came first, your love of vampires or your love of ghosts?
Ooh.
Well, I would say
Are they kind of hand in hand?
Probably empath probably came first, but I didn't know what to call it when I was 4 years old.
Yeah.
But that came first. Had I not been an empath, I don't think I would have paid any attention to ghosts and spirits. But I think being an empath kind of introduced me to it in a way that made ghosts and spirits less threatening than most people seem to be towards ghosts and spirits. Because as an empath, when I was a child, I more or less would go to a relative's house, a house that was built around the 1850s.
Yeah.
And they had this really nice wainscoting, which you could see the wooden grain, and it was highly shine, like it had been varnished, kind of glossy.
Yeah.
And the house that my parents lived in was built around 1961, and all it had was drywall white walls, which to me was kind of boring.
Sure.
But whenever I went to this relative's house, I was 4 years old, and I would just smile. I was happy to see the wainscoting, and I didn't know them, but I was feeling the pride and the joy that my past relatives had in having that beautiful wainscoting wall, which kind of went up to like your chair molding type level.
Yeah. Okay.
So that would probably be first, and I guess probably ghosts and spirits came second, and then vampires would be third.
Okay. So you were kind of led to the paranormal side of it because of your empath ability, I guess you'd say. Okay.
But my empath abilities are not strong enough to use only when I do paranormal research. A lot of times, unless I stay in a place for a long period of time, or for instance, if a person worked at this motel, say from 1942 until 1960, and they lived in a certain house during the same period of time, and I could do off and on over 3 or 4 years paranormal research in both places, then and only then do I have the ability to kind of feel their overall emotions. And I did that with Kathleen Hayes. I had been at a location where she had worked for many years and also lived in a motel, and also I had did paranormal research in her family home, where she had lived from 1942 until she went into a assisted living care center in 1996, and that's a long time to live in a location.
Yeah.
So I could definitely feel that she wanted someone to buy the Hayes house and use it as a family home.
Okay.
And have all their Thanksgiving and holiday meals there in her dining room, and cook the meals in her kitchen. That's what she really wanted. She wanted the house to be used by a family and be a home again, a happy home. And it had been that way when she lived there. Her daughter had told me that when her mother lived there, every year the family would meet there for Thanksgiving and Christmas
Mm-hmm.
from the time she moved in 1942 until she moved out in 1996.
Wow.
So
Long time.
that's a lot of happy memories.
Yeah.
And I was able to pick that emotion up from Kathleen Hayes. The
Okay.
rest of the family members, not so much.
Mm-hmm.
So is being an empath something that you can control, or is this just something that you just get a feeling and
Then right then.
yeah, you just let it happen, or is it something you can turn on and off when you're ready?
Yeah, I don't really control it. It's just
Yeah.
Just accepting it when
if
it
I do
happens.
paranormal research in a certain location, and I don't have to be at that location very long. I will, for instance, I did paranormal research at a place I only stayed at 2 or 3 times in St. Mary's.
Okay.
And I just became very protective of taking care of the floor.
Mhm.
For instance, the dining room where they had their breakfast in the morning, the chairs were scratching the hardwood floor, in some places about a quarter of an inch.
Yeah. Oh wow.
And when I saw that, I told the owner, you're going to have to do something, either get new chairs or put some type of padding, because you're scratching this beautiful, I guess it was over 100-year-old wooden floor.
So
And that flooring, the boards were very long. They went all the way through from one side of the house
wow.
to the other, and all the walls are built over them.
You would
So
think they would want to protect that.
Yeah, you would think so.
Considering
you
the
would
age.
think, but
Yeah.
a lot of times people are so overwhelmed by just running a business
Yeah.
Sure.
that
That's it.
they're wore out, because it's usually a husband and wife. And this was a 3-story beautiful. I think at one time it might have been used as a hospital, and at one time it might have been used as a boarding home. But I think it originally was a residence of a wealthy person.
Okay.
And I won't name any names because I don't have permission to do that. I just did paranormal research in my room and like common area, the porches.
Sure. Yeah, yeah.
But it seems like a lot of times you will take on, I don't know what ghost or spirit would it be, but you will become like overprotective of a place that you don't have any right to be overprotective of.
Yeah. Yeah.
I understand that.
So how many investigations do you think that you've been a part of that were serious investigations that you spent some time and really dug into?
Well, I mainly try to keep my paranormal investigations short.
Mhm.
I usually don't do much more than an hour.
Okay.
And if I try to push it and do more, it usually just wears me out totally.
Okay.
But usually when I do paranormal investigation, I do it leisurely,
Mhm.
and I'll just do a hour a day, or maybe hour in the morning, hour in the afternoon, hour in the evening if I'm staying at a place and I'm writing a book. And then I'll take all the pictures and all the videos, and I'll catalog them and label them and put them in a folder within my laptop or external hard drive, so I know what I want to find and where it's at, and I date it, so it's time stamped with a date within the folder, and I'll say what room it is and where it's located, and then I use all that information to go back and write a book. Um, Sometimes when I did the Hayes House, I actually when I got done an hour long paranormal research session, I would just go and write everything I could remember about what I heard, what I saw. A lot of times you'll get a word like, say, hate.
Yeah.
And then when that happens, the neighborhood dogs start barking. And then
wow.
your car alarm goes off.
Mhm.
And some of this stuff you think that's just too much of a coincidence.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'll just write all that down. Then when you write your book, you have it,
Oh,
because
yeah.
you're not going to remember every little thing
Sure.
that happens. and your video will only show you so much. My camcorder won't pick up the dogs barking.
Yeah.
And won't pick up the my car alarm going off. So I guess I probably take it maybe too seriously. But
not a bad thing.
When you do an hour long paranormal research, you're getting very little on tape and very little photos. You know, photos will only tell you so much. There's a lot that you just need to sit down and write for about an hour of what happened. You know, how you felt. You know, if you felt happy or scared or like astonished that all this is happening at one time, because most of the time when paranormal happens during a paranormal session, it'll all happen bang, bang, bang,
quickly.
like that. For instance, like you'll look, and I used to have, before Hurricane Michael, I used to have like 2 or 3 camcorders. And I would get pictures of my paranormal session from 3 different locations. And sometimes I would look, they used to have like these little lights that blinked, so you know they were functioning. I'd look, and the one camera's not functioning, and I look, and the battery was drained, so I'd have to run and get a direct power cord to plug it in so it would function, because the ghosts and spirits will just drain the battery down. Put another battery in, they'll just drain it down.
That's crazy.
And then I look, and the other camcorder is also the same way, you know. And then for instance, I used to have the older type thermal imager, and I would have that set in a certain location, and that would be turned, and I thought, man, everything's happening at once. And a lot of times your one camera that is working didn't catch the turn of your thermal imager. And that thermal imager was not a recorder. All it would do, you'd have to hold a camera to its screen to record what was going on. So if anything, if you had a video camcorder going, I used to have Bell and Howell. If you had it going where it could catch the movement, then you'd be good to go. And I like to do paranormal research during the day, because any type movement is going to be slight.
Okay.
So
very quick.
If you have cameras covering everything, and apparently the ghosts and spirits were saying, this is cool. And they were like touching it and holding it and moving it. But, you know, they didn't try to knock it off or anything. They just kind of just turned it. But I pay very close attention to how I lay equipment down. And I know I didn't lay it down like that. But when it happens, it all happens at once. And for me to try to verbally say that so it's on video, sometimes you don't have time before something else happens. Then you'll get several words on your Ovilus 5. And I usually try to spell the word and you know, always repeat what the word is, just in case the people at home didn't hear the Ovilus 5, or the camcorder's not within range to pick it up. So that's the reason why I do an hour-long session and then write what happened. Now, if I'm not doing a book, I don't do that, because it's a lot of work.
And exhausting and tiring, especially what's happening around you. Have you ever thought? Have you ever done it where you've started writing while you're doing it at the same time, or do you always wait till after everything's happening? You know what I mean? Do you get feelings where you're like, I should be writing right now while I'm doing this, and see what comes?
I'm trying to think. With the Hayes House Ghoster people too, I was always doing the paranormal research to actually do a book, but I don't think I started writing the book until I was very close to being finished. I think I had completed all the paranormal research before I actually started writing. I'm trying to remember that part. It's not in my long-term memory.
What about the Hayes House was special to you that made you want to write a book on it?
Well, I had did other businesses in the location, and one business in the location was a place where both families, the Buck family who built the Hayes house at that time, I guess you call it the Buck house, they lived there, but they built the motel where they worked first. And then a year later, in 1908, they built the Hayes house. And astonishing enough, the Gibson and Hayes family also worked at the Gibson. Well, I won't say the name of it. I don't have permission. They worked at the hotel and then moved to the Hayes house. Okay. So the same two families that had worked at the motel also moved to the Hayes house. Wow. So that's the reason why I wanted to do the Hayes house, is because I had verbal permission to do paranormal research at the motel, but they backed out on allowing me to publish the book.
Gosh,
they wouldn't give me legal permission to publish a book. And I had spent from 2012 to 2016 working on that book.
Wow.
I was going to do it in like 3 or 4 parts. I had so much information.
And is this something that you let them proofread and then they decided, or they just didn't want it?
Well,
it takes a lot to write a book.
I don't think they didn't. I don't think they wanted me to write the book.
Okay.
I just feel that they wanted me coming there because I was spending money.
Yeah.
And everyone told me legally, get them to sign permission for the book, then spend 3 or 4 years there.
Yeah.
And that's what I do now. So I learned my lesson.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense. You know, we've talked to a lot of paranormal investigators, and a lot of them talk about, experiences where they had attachments and stuff like that. And I know you mentioned that you never had any kind of crazy experiences with like, demons or anything like that. But have you had anything that you ever brought home with you that was a little strange that you think maybe?
Well, the whole term attachment is kind of like negative, kind of like haunting is negative.
Sure.
And paranormal investigating is like you're investigating a ghost for a felony.
Yeah.
A lot of the terms in our society are kind of negative towards ghosts and spirits. That's why I like to say paranormal researching. And so I don't like to use the term attachment, but ghosts and spirits can go wherever they want to go. To me, they're just electromagnetic energy. They can travel almost the speed of light. So you can't tell them. It's like having a feral cat. You can't tell that cat what to do.
Yeah, exactly.
And you can't tell a ghost and spirit what to do. If they want to hang out with you, if they enjoy your company, it's almost like having a best friend or a wife or a girlfriend. If they want to be with you, they're going to be with you.
Sure. Yeah.
And at times I'm glad that I've had ghosts and spirits with me. But I hate to use the term attachment because that's always a negative connotation about ghosts and spirits. But I have had occasions where after doing a paranormal research, I used to have cable TV. I don't anymore. But my cable TV would be muted or turned off, especially if I laid down to take a nap.
Okay.
So it was almost like the ghost of spirit. Well, he's sleeping. He don't need this on. So it was little things like that. And I do paranormal research at least 1 hour each week and sometimes more. So, but different things happen. Was there any questions that the people at home wanted to ask? I wasn't really paying attention, but if they do have a question, let me know.
Sure. They're all just kind of saying hi and kind of agreeing with what you're saying.
Yeah.
I will say that there's always ghosts and spirits around, whether I'm doing paranormal research or not. but they just do minor things. Like
Yeah.
some ghosts and spirits will put down the lid of the toilet. I
Yeah.
like to keep the lid of the toilet up so it keeps it clean.
Yeah.
But I've been in the bathroom and watched as the lid went down. I should have whipped out my camera, but I didn't. But there's a ghost or spirit that puts the lid down.
Thank you, sir.
And the lid will not go down on its own.
Right.
I like how
also the bathroom and the bedroom light will be turned on or off, and I didn't do it.
Okay.
Can you find me a ghost that can do dishes and laundry? Because
yes,
that's what I would like.
I'm down with that.
Yeah.
Apparently, most ghosts and spirits didn't like doing that when they were alive, and they're probably glad that they're dead, so they don't have to do it.
You're worried about my toilet seat, but I can't get you to do some laundry. All right, I guess.
I like how you have like your experiences. You always talk about that's something negative, and it seems like every experience you've had has always been positive. So it's really nice to see a positive side of it, that you don't really have a bad story of you have such a good mindset and a positive attitude that you're not trying to taunt something. So and it's really nice to see that, because of a lot of people that you see online and on videos, they will taunt them and to get that negative reaction they're looking for.
Right.
So it's really nice to see it's for a change.
Well, I always thought that my positivity would land me a TV show, and I really know nothing about the technical side or the part of editing electronically video and audio footage to be on TV. So until I learn that, I guess there'll never be a TV show.
Never say never. Never say never.
I think positivity is lacking, especially in America. I think most people in America like paranormal only if it scares them back to church. And I don't think they want a positive ghost.
Yeah.
And I was hoping maybe like Australia or New Zealand or even Great Britain would want a paranormal researcher like me, because they seem to be a little on the positive side when it comes to paranormal as compared to the USA.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
I agree. Sorry about that. So what we got?
Nicole asked, and maybe you can answer this, maybe you can't.
Yeah.
How can we close spirit portals?
Well, that's another terminology that I don't agree with. I think spirits are no more than electromagnetic energy. They can travel any place they want, any part of space that you can see and think of is their highway.
Yeah.
They don't need something extraordinary like a portal. Now, the only thing I could think of that might need a portal would be something coming from a multiverse, from another verse.
Universe. Yep.
Yeah. Or from a different plane or I don't know the terminology of it, but they're coming from another universe, and they might need a portal to get from that place to where we are. But if you are a ghost or spirit within our universe, if you believe in multi-universes, you don't need a portal to travel around. And the bottom line is the whole expansion of the universe is going so fast, and they can't account for it when it comes to the mass. So I think there are multiverses, because that would account for the extra mass that we just cannot understand, comprehend, or see.
Yeah.
Was there another question that came up? I missed it.
There's a couple.
Yeah. Joe Tersey asked, how do they actually travel?
Ghosts and spirits?
Yeah. If they don't use,
they're electromagnetic energy. So, they're just kind of like sunlight travels.
Yeah.
Right.
They can move. When you're electromagnetic energy, I guess you can manipulate any ion, any positive charge, negative charge to move in your own environment. but they
and that's
don't
any
need.
direction too. It could be.
Yes,
It's just so fast.
yes, that's true. And they can move through solid walls. They can move through windows.
Hmm.
I've heard it while I was doing paranormal research. A lot of people think the knocking is a ghost trying to get their attention. It's actually a ghost coming through the wall, and as the ghost travels from what I call medium,
Hmm.
like air is a medium,
Mhm.
solid's a medium,
Yeah.
liquid's a medium,
Hmm.
from chemistry or science. So when they go through different mediums, it kind of makes like a jet plane, breaking Mach 1 and causing a sound barrier, causing that sound, a
Yeah. Yeah.
loud sound. Ghosts and
Interesting.
spirits, when they go through medium, it just makes like a knocking sound. And
Hmm.
if a ghost or spirit is standing off to the side, like in the air,
Yeah.
but drifting between the air and the wall, that'll make a scratching sound. They
Okay.
kind of, and I think ghosts and spirits are just, they're people too. They stand off to the side. They're not going to stand right in the middle of the hall or the middle of the room. They're going to maybe lean up against the wall theoretically,
Yeah.
and when they do, as their electromagnetic energy drifts back and forth between the medium of air and the medium of the solid wall, that's going to cause your scratching sound. And when a ghost or spirit comes in through the window, if you take like a plastic bag
Hmm.
that you get at the grocery store and just slap it against the glass window,
Mhm.
Yeah.
that's what it sounds like when ghosts and spirits go through glass. And glass is, it's a solid, but it's somewhat of a moving, slow liquid
Hmm.
also. So when a ghost of spirit goes from the air from the outside through the glass and back into the air of the room that you are in, you'll hear that slapping sound. And that's just a ghost of spirit coming through.
Oh, I
Hmm.
didn't know that.
Interesting.
Something I learned.
I wrote articles in different magazines over the years about that, but
Hmm. We have a question from Christine Johnson as well. I don't know if you want to put that up there.
Yeah. Ever heard of Francis Sorrell House in Savannah, Georgia? Very haunted by a ghost Molly. They say she was murdered by her master Francis. This is back in the 1800s.
Thank
I
you.
think I have on one of the TV shows. I vaguely remember it,
Okay.
but I've never. I've been to Savannah. I think I went through Savannah one time on my way to Tybee Island, if I'm
Hmm.
pronouncing it right.
Hmm.
Because and that was when I was in the regular army the first time back in probably 83 or 84 or 85, 1985.
Hmm.
So I've been through, but I did not stop.
Hmm. Joe asked, "Are you more prone to have experiences living close to high-powered electric lines?" I,
Well,
gue-
I,
I
I
guess that would
think
kind of
that
make sense if.
ghosts and spirits should be able to travel, on electrical lines. They should be able to travel through current. They should be able to actually travel through water because water is highly conducted.
Mhm.
It's
Hmm.
got that bipolar type positive and negative ends to it.
Yeah.
So um, I think they can definitely travel. But one thing about high electrical energy that everyone has to know, everyone always feels a little intimidated about a basement. And
Mhm.
that's because you're enclosed with a lot of high electromagnetic energy things like a furnace, hot water heater.
Yeah.
All the wiring is down there, all your
Makes
electrical
sense.
boxes is down there. Any type of high voltage will make you feel uncomfortable. And as an
Sure.
empath, if I stay in a room that's next to high voltage or say the electrical panel to turn off current if they need to do work inside of a room.
Yeah.
If that's on the outside wall of where I'm staying, I will feel totally uncomfortable and miserable as an empath. So being near anything that has a lot of current, high voltage, can make you feel very uncomfortable. not all human beings feel uncomfortable, but it can make you feel very uncomfortable, and it's not paranormal. It's just the electromagnetic effect on your body and on your brain.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Interesting. Okay. That makes sense.
I could see why.
I think I answered this question.
Yeah, I think
That was
so.
Great
Yeah.
answer.
So I know you haven't had really demons or anything like that, but I know you mentioned earlier when we were talking earlier about doppelgangers that you might have come across. You want to tell that story?
Well, in 2017, January 1st, I had kidney failure, and I was in the hospital for about, I don't know, 45 days.
Wow.
From the ICU to a unit. It was a hospital within the hospital. It was a place where people usually go to pass away, but it wasn't. It wasn't hospice, but it was right next to it.
Yeah, right before it. Yeah.
But anyway, I got better and went home. But when I was in the hospital, I would say the first time I had a doppelganger experience was I was in the ICU. I was in there for like maybe 6 days. And I had a kidney doctor, and she usually came into my room. The ICU rooms are very small, and they have like glass walls with curtains up. So she stood on the outside, which I thought was kind of strange. And I had besides the kidney failure, I had problems with my bleeding near my esophagus from years. I tried to stay in the Army Reserves long enough to get a pension, and the federal government long enough to get a pension. And I had back and knee problems, and everything pretty much I was given required long periods of standing. So I was in a lot of pain. So I was taking a lot of ibuprofen. And when you swallow the ibuprofen, it stays near your upper part of the esophagus before it dissolves.
Okay.
And it kind of erodes the tissue and the blood vessels in that area. And that's where my bleeding was coming from. And the doctors had went in and tried to stop it, but they were unsuccessful. And they were going to go in and try to clamp it off again that afternoon. But that morning, what looked like my kidney doctor came by and smiled. And like I say, she didn't come in the room. She stood out in the hall, and she said, "Good news." And I said, "What?" And she said, "Your bleeding has stopped." And I said, "Great. I won't have to go down to surgery then." Yeah. And then she walked on. So when the nurse came in and said, "You're going down to surgery," I said, "No, I don't have to go. The bleeding has stopped." And anyway, they were really upset with me. They said, "Mr. Evans, you're going to cause yourself to die by not doing what the doctor wants." And they wanted to know who told me the bleeding has stopped. And I told them it was one of my doctors. At that time, I was so sick that my short-term memory was kind of messed up. So I didn't remember the doctor's name or what the doctor treated. I just said, "Well, it was my doctor." I had like 3 or 4 doctors at that point in time. So anyway, I didn't go, and the nurse in the ICU was really upset with me for not going. And then she did a blood draw, and about 5 p.m. she came in and said, "Mr. Evans," and I said, "Yes." She said, "Your blood count shows that your red blood cells are going up, so that means your bleeding has stopped." So it was like, "I told you so." Anyway, I had that doctor for maybe 2 years after I got out of the hospital. And one time I asked her, I said, "You remember that time you told me the bleeding to stop?" And she said, "Mr. Evans, there's no way I would have known that, and I didn't tell you that." And I said, "Okay." So it was a doppelganger, ghost or spirit that knew that I would trust my doctor, my kidney doctor. So came to me as my kidney doctor to give me that news so I wouldn't go down. You know, if the bleeding has stopped, don't be fooling around with the clamp anymore.
Sure. Yeah.
You know? So that was one way the ghost of spirit had helped me out. And while I was in that hospital, my next encounter, now I can't say it was a doppelganger, but it was at least a ghost or a spirit. Uh, when they didn't transfer me to that ward, that was the next step before you get to hospice, but they did it 10:30 at night.
Oh.
And when they were taking me over, there was a nurse that met him in a hall and said, "I'll take him from here." And that nurse took me to my room, which was 333. And you know, she didn't help me get into bed. She just held the gurney so I could slide over, and I did. And I asked her if she was going to do my, blood pressure, because they were taking my blood pressure and my vitals every 8 hours, and it was almost 11 o'clock. So she took my blood pressure and my vitals, and then as she got ready to leave the room, I said, "Don't forget my chart," because they sent my chart over from the ICU, and it was in the bed at my feet. So I handed her the chart, and then I went to sleep.
Mm-hmm.
And shortly after 11, sometime between 11 and 11:30, a nurse came in my room and yelled at me, "Who are you and how'd you get in this room?" And I thought, that's a hell of a way to wake somebody up.
Yeah.
And I looked at her and said, "I'm Keith Evans." And I said, "You have my chart." She said, "I don't have your chart." And I said, "Well, the nurse took my vitals close to 11 o'clock. She said, "Nobody's taking your vitals. If they did, they didn't write it down."
Mm-hmm.
And I remember that lady, I told her when I went to the hospital, I was telling everyone about the book I was working on. I hadn't published it yet because this was early January of 2017. I didn't publish the Hayes House Ghost or People 2 until I think it was August or September of 2018. And the bottom line was this lady knew about my book. So how could she know about my book? Because I started to tell her about my book, and she said, "Mr. Evans, I know about your book."
Mm-hmm.
And she said something about, "I think you're doing a fine job with the paranormal." And I saw that lady one other time. They were allowing me to walk alone with a walker one time a day and to go down the hall and back. And I saw that lady one time in the hallway, and I talked to her, and she was with another a little old lady she was pushing in a wheelchair. And I spoke to that lady, and she just told me that she doesn't speak. And then that was the last time I saw that lady. But the hospital, the nurse that came in around 11:30 and yelled at me because she thought I was some type of homeless vagrant that was stealing a hospital room to sleep.
Yeah.
She told me there was no lady that fit the description. This lady was probably in her 50s, had gray hair. And she said, "There's no lady here in her 50s that has gray hair." So, and as I got better and was walking around, that second time I'd seen that lady, after that, I had asked the other nursing stations. There was like 3 different nursing stations to this hospital within the hospital, like a unit one step away from hospice.
Mm-hmm.
And I talked to all 3 nursing stations, and they said no lady worked there that had gray hair and was in her 50s. So I don't know. It wasn't really a doppelganger situation, but it was definitely, I think, a ghost or spirit.
Yeah.
And
disguising themselves.
And then the other situation that happened wasn't really a doppelganger situation, but it was I guess my second day at this hospital within the hospital. I had a nurse that was like really angry and mean, and she had told me that they put me on chemotherapy medicine so that my immune system would not attack my kidneys, because she said my kidneys were in such bad shape that they wanted them to heal. And they were afraid that my immune system might not recognize them and attack them. So they put me on this chemotherapy medicine, and she said, if anyone comes to your room, let us know.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, there was a lady walking into the room, and she walked out. So I said, well, she knows that lady's in here. And that lady sat down in the chair, and she said, how did I feel about my situation? And I told the lady, I said, well, 2 doctors told me I was going to die, but I think I'm going to get better.
Yeah.
And this lady agreed with me. Now, she didn't look like anyone that I had known, so I wouldn't say it was a doppelganger situation, but I think she was a ghost or spirit, because I found out later on she actually held my hand and her hand was warm, and she
Mm-hmm.
gave me a business card, and then she left the room because the nurse was getting ready to come back in.
Yeah.
So she walked out as the nurse was coming back in. And after that, I went to sleep. And when I woke up, I couldn't find the business card. So I asked that nurse, they were working 12-hour shifts, what happened to the business card that the lady that visited me, what happened to that business card? I can't find it. And she said, no lady visited you. And I said, yes, she was walking in as you were walking out, and she left while you were walking in. She said, I didn't pass any lady either way.
Wow.
So anyway, but that lady was so reassuring. She says, you're gonna get better, 100%, you're gonna get better.
Mm-hmm.
Of course I did. I'm here now. And that was what, January of 2017. And the last time I went to the doctor, my kidneys were functioning probably the highest that they have ever functioned since my kidney failure, at 45%.
Wow.
And that's both kidneys together. So they're almost functioning about 5% off of what one kidney would function. So that's pretty good.
Yeah.
So your first doctor that was your kidney doctor, was that, do you feel like that was a real person there? Or do you think that was something that was just put into your head to make you think it's a real person, whether it's an angel or whatever, a doppelganger or whatever? But do you think there was someone physically there, or do you think it was something that you just kind of put together in your head?
As far as doppelgangers, I'm not sure. I've talked to different people about doppelgangers, and some people say that they're the only one that can see the doppelganger. Other people say that they've actually, more than one person saw the doppelganger.
Okay.
So I don't know. It could be telepathically sent right directly to my brain, the audio and visual.
Right. Yeah.
It could be. I don't know. I can't say one way or the other.
Sure.
Oh, okay.
Gotcha. Interesting.
I would have been like, let me see that camera. You guys have cameras. You know what I mean? In the hospital.
Got a camera in the hallway?
Yeah, I need to see it. I need reassurance.
So as far as investigate, or I guess investigation, you did the Hayes house. Is there anywhere that you're either working on now or somewhere that you wanting to do that you haven't done yet that's on your list?
Oh, there's a lot of places. I always try to get written permission to do a future book. And I hate to say it, but Florida is very conservative, and most people aren't going to give you written permission to do paranormal research on something that they don't believe in.
Yeah.
And a lot of people say, nope, there's no ghosts, there's no spirits, there's only the Holy Spirit,
Right.
Yeah.
So it's very hard in Florida to get that permission. And I usually do public places where I could just go in and keep a low profile and do a short paranormal session.
That's smart. So you don't have to ask for permission then. But.
Right.
What do you think, out of all the evidence that you've collected over the years, what do you think is the most solid evidence that you've gotten, or the best evidence that you think proves, ghosts are real, and what you think you're seeing and hearing is legit?
Well, I think I get a lot of solid information and data from my equipment. It's just about, not all locations, but many locations.
Yeah.
probably more than I could say, during a hour and a half podcast. But
Sure.
Yeah.
I definitely, I don't have any problems believing in ghosts and spirits because of just things that happened in my life. For example, when I was 4 years old, about the same time that I found out about my empathic abilities, even though I didn't call it that back then.
Yeah.
I didn't even know what the word was back then. I had a situation where I always enjoyed listening to whatever the adults were talking about. And I was just bored with playing with the kids. And one time the adults were talking about a train wreck. And I thought it had just happened. So I wanted to know all about the train wreck. And they said, no, it'll scare you, so go away. Well, anyway, so I always woke up around 8 o'clock, and I always woke up hungry. And my mother liked to sleep in until about 11 o'clock, so I had to wait to eat, and I was always hungry.
Yeah.
So one morning I was up, and my two aunts, the ones that lived in the house where my relatives had lived since about 1850,
Yeah.
where they had the wainscoting. Well,
Okay.
my mother had fallen out with them and didn't like them anymore, so I didn't get to go to that house and enjoy the wainscoting. But one of my aunts came into my room and said, Keith, would you like to go see the train wreck? And I said, I'd love to. And I said, but my mother won't let me go. And she said, I think we can be back before your mother wakes up. I said, okay, let's go. So we walked up to a little town called Woodbine, where they had a open air canning factory where they would husk corn, ears of corn. It was kind of like a carport with husking equipment.
Okay.
And we walked up, and the trains was kind of laying on its side. It was mainly coal cars, and it was laying on its side, and it was all kind of like, I don't know, zigzagged, where they had crashed and laid on their sides. And they had actually ran into part of, but not all of, the shed where the huskers were for canning corn.
Okay.
And it's probably a quarter of a mile up there, maybe a quarter of a mile up and back. So we walked up and back, got back before my mother woke up, and I said goodbye to my aunt. And I had always thought throughout the years, because this was when I was like 4 years old, because we moved when I was 5, or maybe before I was 5. So as my aunts got older, they were still alive up until maybe the early 80s.
Okay.
And my grandfather passed away in an auto accident in 1973. So I was able to see my aunts, and I was telling my grandfather about my aunt coming into my room and taking me to the train wreck. And this was before my grandfather passed away. Yeah. So he passed away when I was 13. So I had to at least be 13 or 12 when I talked to him about this. And he kind of perked up and said, train wreck? He said, tell me about this train wreck. So I told him, and I said, my aunt came into the room, took me up to the train wreck, told him all about it, explained that to him. He said, well, I saw it, and it looked just the way you explain it, because I was alive during that time.
Yeah.
And I said, what do you mean? And I said, it didn't happen when I was 4 years old. He said, no, it happened before you were born. And I said, the strangest thing about that, it didn't look like Aunt Virgie or Aunt Ada. The lady that took me to the train wreck was like a cross between the two. He said that would have been my mother. And his mother passed away when he was like a child. I think he was like maybe 9 or 10.
Oh, wow.
And I'm pretty sure his mother, which would have been my great-grandmother, was her first name was Sarah. So I knew then that was paranormal. And then my grandfather and I never talked about it again. And then he got killed in an auto accident, and then never got a chance to talk to him about it again.
Man,
but so I didn't know it was paranormal at all until I talked to my grandfather. And had I not talked to him about it,
Yeah.
I would have just thought that it was either Aunt Virgie or Aunt Ada that took me, and
Yeah.
somehow they
Not
looked
his
like
mom.
a combination of the two. I
Yeah.
would have never known that it was my great
grandma Sarah.
grandmother, Sarah Franklin. I would have
Yeah.
never known that.
Wow.
So
That's cool.
And today, there's probably paranormal situations happening to all of us that we just don't know it's paranormal.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
when I have interaction with what I find out after the fact might have been a ghost or a spirit,
Yeah.
They look as real as you and I do. They
Yeah,
don't
yeah.
look like a ghost, or they don't look like they're fading in or out, or look like the condition that they were in when they passed away. They're
Yeah.
an able-bodied person that looks as healthy as you and I,
Mm-hmm. Interesting.
and they're as solid as you and I.
Oh yeah.
Was there any more questions? I didn't want to miss anyone's questions.
No, I think you covered everything pretty much.
Yeah. Answered
Okay.
everyone's questions in the comments.
Yeah. Well,
Okay.
Keith, that was
Thank everyone
fascinating.
for their questions at home.
Absolutely. James,
Oh, yeah.
Joe, Nicole, all you guys.
Tom,
Christine.
Christine, thank you guys for stopping by.
Yeah, for sure. Keith, you want to plug where you can find all your books and everything else that you're up to?
Well, both of my books, the Hayes House Ghost or People 2 and Vampires Dead or Alive, are available paperback on Amazon and other locations where good books are found. And they're also available ebook on Kindle. And I have a YouTube channel called Paranormal Short Sessions by Keith Evans, where I put my paranormal short sessions, which are usually anywhere between 10 minutes to 30 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
And I also put the promos that I put on Facebook and Instagram. I put them on YouTube also, because sometimes promos run a little long.
Yeah.
Sure.
Especially if you're getting good data and an intelligent ghost or spirit. Now, if you put your promo on Facebook and Instagram, they had promised me that they'd allow me 2 to 3 minutes, but they still cut it off after a minute.
Yeah.
They'll allow it to upload
Mm-hmm.
and publish, but after a minute they cut it off. So if you're on Instagram or Facebook and you see me and the promo seems to cut off, well, just go to YouTube channel and you'll get to see the entirety of the promo, because some promos will run maybe 2 minutes long if I'm getting good data.
Yeah.
And I
Awesome.
think that covers about everything that I would like to plug. I can't think of anything else.
Awesome. It was a great, talking to you and hearing your stories. And I know you have some more. So when you write your next book, let me know and we'll get back at it again. And
we
Thanks for
appreciate
having
you
me
giving
on.
us the time.
collect some more stories for us. And we will do this again.
All right,
Everyone,
good being on.
Yeah, thank you so much, everybody. Thanks for checking us out. We will see you guys next week, 7:00, like usual. And we'll see you later.
Can I show them the books? Really
Absolutely.
quick? I probably
Absolutely.
should do that earlier.
Yeah, for sure.
I usually do it. Okay, can you see?
Oh
Yep.
yeah. Oh yeah.
That's the
That
I guess
that one's the Hayes House on the left on your right hand, and then this one's Dead or Alive.
yeah.
Vampire
We'll bring it
books.
over this way.
There you go.
There you go. Perfect.
That's the Vampires Dead or Alive,
I like the cover art.
and then the Hayes House Ghost or People 2.
Awesome.
Awesome. Everybody check that out. And we will see you guys next time. Keith, thank you so much, man. I appreciate it.
Thank
Oh,
you.
yeah,
I
we
appreciate
We'll
it.
keep in touch. Appreciate you.
Okay. Thanks.
Thanks.
Good night.